the room. And we're still expecting quite a few more. We had a really great registration. So we're going to give folks a few minutes to come in and get settled. But if you can introduce yourself in the chat, maybe put your name, something about you, what's brought you into this meeting, where you live, perhaps without your address, but what's brought you here, and your name, and something that you're excited about tonight. Otherwise, we'll give people maybe 3 or 4 minutes to log in and then get started. Since I'm unmuted, I'll introduce myself verbally. My name is Charity Cabango, and I am a neighbor in this wonderful Davenport neighborhood and community. I've lived in the neighborhood for on and off about 10 years, and really excited to dig into this important topic with you guys tonight. So feel free again to say hello to your neighbors and your community in the chat, and let us know what's bringing you here, what's of interest to you tonight.
Should we do some more introductions?
Sure. Why don't we do a round of those who are kind of co-hosts tonight? There's a few of us, so go right ahead and introduce yourselves. I hear, Arella, you've already unmuted, so why don't you go first?
My name is Arella Gannon. I live in the Dufferin Grove neighborhood, and I moderate a neighborhood group called Friends of Dufferin Grove Park, and I'm on the Building a Better Bloor Dufferin group. And we've successfully negotiated with the developers in the neighborhood there. And I'm an artist, and geez, my hair looks wild in this. I'll put it up.
Thanks, Arella. Jeremy?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeremy Withers. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Toronto, and I'm actually writing my dissertation on municipal housing policies. In particular, I'm studying the inclusionary zoning policy that is going to be voted on in the next few weeks. And I also work with the Affordable Housing Challenge Project, which is an initiative of the School of Cities just at the University of Toronto. And we put on events monthly, kind of discussing mostly city housing politics and different policies making their way through. So excited to be here tonight. And I'm also a Davenport resident, so excited to see so many people coming out.
How are we doing on numbers in the room? Why don't we do a couple more introductions and then we can get started. I know we're tight for time, but we actually have 60 people in the room already, which is great. Why don't we let 2 more people from our co-hosts that are going to be speaking tonight introduce themselves. Saman?
Hi, everyone. My name is Saman. I'm the organizing director at Progress Toronto. I'm really excited to be here with everyone today in our fight for more affordable housing in our city. And I'm really excited to win at City Hall and make sure that 20 to 30% of all new development are set aside as affordable. And I'm really excited that you all are also excited about it. So
that's great. So my job as moderator is really to try and keep us on time. And so you will get a chance to meet some of the other hosts and facilitators as we move along. But I'm going to suggest we get started so that we have a chance to have the rich discussion that we have planned for tonight. So maybe we can start with projecting the slides. And
Yes,
really,
just one quick second.
no problem.
Did everyone see
And-
my screen?
Great. So before we get started, I do want to begin with a land acknowledgement. And, you know, this is an important part of any gathering and meeting, but I think it's particularly important as we are here to discuss home and place. So wanted to begin with acknowledging that we are gathering today on the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee, Chippewa, the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations, and that Toronto is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty signed with the Mississaugas and many Chippewa bands. As we meet here today, let us renew and strengthen our commitment to reconciliation based on respect, partnership, and action to build stronger, more resilient, and a more equitable city. And I think, you know, really that is central to our discussion today. Let me also take this moment to acknowledge our MPP, Merritt Stiles, I believe is on the line. If I think I saw it, she can wave and hopefully get a chance to hear from her as we have discussions later on. So the first slide, if you want to go ahead, is really just go quickly over the agenda. We really do have a lot of community members and community leaders who are going to share their thoughts on this issue of inclusionary zoning and really how we win. So first and foremost, we will start with some local context from two kind of hyper-local groups, Build a Better Bloor Dufferin, Arella, who will speak to that, and then the context from Katie on JTCAN, which is the Junction Triangle Community Action Network. And then we'll have an overview of inclusionary zoning. So really, what is inclusionary zoning? Jeremy's going to walk us through some important facts there. And then we'll have Alejandra speak to, you know, the history, but also how we're organizing for a strong inclusionary zoning policy. After that, we'll have a short Q&A and just make sure we're all on the same page. And if there's any questions around, you know, the what of inclusionary zoning. And then we'll have Saman join us to talk about some key issues to push forward. So really, how do we push this agenda forward at the city and make a win here? And then we'll have some Q&A and really, again, some time for discussion and to hear from you and to have some dialogue around what we've had shared with us earlier. Then we'll wrap up with some next steps and where to plug in and how to continue this work after the conversation today. So before I hand it over to the local context, I just want to make sure that, you know, signal how important this is. And I've seen it in the chat already, people talking about housing as a human right, homes over profit, and really how do we make this city more equitable? And I know, you know, for myself as a resident of this community, trying to attend all the different developer meetings and really pushing one at a time on each of these developments, inclusionary zoning really is an opportunity for us to have widespread systemic change. And so really looking forward to talking with you all and hearing how we can collectively push that agenda forward. We have been at our own levels, but I think this is really an opportune moment to really push and then make a change at the city. So over to you, Arella.
Hi there. Yeah, my name is Arella Gannon, and I'm one of the group at Building a Better Bloor Dufferin. And just to give you a little bit of context, there are 7.5 acres of land that belong to the Toronto District School Board that got sold to a developer, and our group negotiated to make sure that the neighborhood got some benefits, and we did. We got, you know, a land trust, a community hub, all sorts of stuff. And it's been announced only in the last few days that that whole development has just recently been sold to a developer and a land organization. But the thing I wanted to just make sure that everyone out here understands is, as a group, we keep on reinventing the wheel for our own little pocket of our neighborhood. And what has to happen is we as a collective need to pool resources and pool ideas so that we can manage to affect change through the whole system, because the entire city needs inclusionary zoning. The entire city needs places for artists and green spaces and community space and daycare spaces. And we need to make sure that whatever gets negotiated, what is important, like we have to keep, the thing I keep on saying is, what kind of city do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a city where there are only luxury condos and expensive rental units and all of the daycare centers and upholstery places and stores that sell stuff we don't need, and all that is gone? That's the biggest part, what I wanted to say. And also the other thing is that we need to, one community needs to befriend another. And what we're doing here tonight is beautiful that way. So thanks.
Thanks, Sarala. And I realized I didn't give some house rules. I think we're all quite familiar with Zoom by now, but I think you were all notified as you logged in that the call is being recorded. And so I want to let everyone know that we'll be sending that recording out later. It is also being broadcasted live. So we want to make sure we're reaching as many members of the community as we can. So there'll be an opportunity to share that link with others later. But thank you for that context, Arella. I'm going to pass it over to Katie to share with us on JTCAN's local context.
Thanks, Charity. Hey, everyone. This is so great to see everybody. It's such a great turnout. Awesome. Hey, I'm Katie. So I'm with the group, the Junction Triangle Community Action Network. We're so excited to have so many people out. We've been trying for so long to get people kind of mobilized around this. The Junction Triangle Community Action Network is a newer group. We are interested in making sure that no one gets left behind in our neighborhood, and we're concerned with issues of displacement, of policing, of economic and racial justice as they connect to housing. So a little bit of a context of what's been happening in our neighborhood, which we know is happening similarly in other places across Davenport and across the city, is that there's just a massive amount of development. So much that we, even as a group of people who are intentional about trying to stay on top of it, cannot and could not stay on top of it. We've had some weeks in the past year where there were 3 or 4 meetings that we were expected to attend that were either a consultation of a new application or a rezoning application or an area study meeting. And it's like the pace of it is just impossible for a community group to stay on top of, especially knowing that the other folks at the table are developers with tons of resources and tons of money. We're not on an equal footing when we're there at that table. Things that have been happening is because of COVID, all of this negotiating and kind of like community consultation is happening via WebEx, which is like the worst thing for organizing ever. What happens on WebEx is community members show up, you get muted, you don't get called on. If these consultations had been happening in person, you could echo somebody's thought, you could hold the floor longer, you could hold someone accountable who's not answering the question, you could speak up. And so we've been really frustrated with the fact that there's tons of development, there's some consultation, and the consultation is like meaningless. So we would be going to these meetings to ask critical questions about affordable housing and displacement. And there were times where just no one even was called on. And we were trying to like message each other to be like, if they call your name, ask them about affordable housing. And there's no capacity for community to actually really engage. It also like, things that we have been told and trying to push for more affordable housing in our neighborhood specifically is this gets negotiated later. So this is not the time to talk about it. And then we would say, when does it get negotiated? And then you just get muted or not answered. We've been told by developers that 1-bedroom units are a more affordable way to enter the real estate market. So their plan for affordable housing was to increase the number of 1-bedroom units, which is like super frustrating to hear. When we bring up that Build a Better Bloor Dufferin was able to win some money for community land trust, we've been told that, well, that project isn't like this one. So we're continually being asked to consider every single project individually, and there's no pathway or mechanism to look cohesively at all of the development that's happening in our neighborhood or in Davenport, and what all of that development means when we're trying to think of things like policing and securitization and the cost of housing and displacement. And we've been told time and again by all kinds of folks at the city that we can't ask for too much. So if we're going to ask for affordable housing, we shouldn't push on childcare, and we shouldn't push on securitization of space or public spaces. So part of what we've been really frustrated with is a lack of any sort of way for us to meaningfully push on affordable housing in our neighborhood. And part of why we wanted to work together with these folks to bring this event to life is to say that we're really interested in a policy that would take away this kind of individual negotiation that community members are expected to have on a completely unequal footing, and that's a completely inequitable process. So I would say, like, we're very tired of being expected to negotiate this with people who have tons of money and tons of resources, which are developers. We can't compete with paid lobbyists, and there are paid lobbyists right now who are at the city trying to water down this inclusionary zoning policy, which you'll hear about tonight. And we've been putting tons of pressure, or trying to put tons of pressure on our councilor, Anna Bylau, to say that we really want to see more action around issues of affordability and equity in the ward, and also that this is like urgent. This isn't like a far away, one day our city will be unlivable. It's people are being evicted from encampments today, and our councilor is not doing enough to actually speak out against that. And that is directly tied to the issue of development and policing and affordable housing, and that it's not something that we can wait on. So we're really excited to have you all here to learn more about inclusionary zoning, and also specifically to learn about how we can mobilize all of us to put some pressure on our councilor to have a really strong inclusionary zoning policy so that we can move forward with some positive change, like quickly and now. So that's like a brief snapshot of everything that's happening in our little neighborhood, but I think maybe some of that will resonate with you all across Davenport.
Thanks, Katie. So much important stuff that was shared there again about the local context and our reality. There was a community meeting last night trying to participate while feeding kids, and knowing that there's another one next week. It's really, this is how we can make, really systemic change. I will say, to the point of how effective and how engaging those WebEx meetings are, Zoom isn't perfect, but I would encourage you all to use the chat as if we were all in a room together. If you like what someone says, you can say, yes, I like that, keep it going. Let us know that, feel free to use that chat to express, that you agree or disagree for that matter, but please use the chat. I mean, we don't get to have the benefit of being all in the same room and really getting the energy of a community meeting. And we really chose Zoom as a platform because it does have some more of that functionality. So we'll certainly be looking at the chat when it comes time for Q&A, but please use it as a way to just connect with each other and to connect with us as if we were all sitting in a room together. So I will pass it over to Jeremy, who is a PhD student at U of T. He's going to walk us through some of what is this inclusionary zoning policy, and really how is it, why we need it, and why is it important, and why are we all spending an hour and a half of our Wednesday night to really discuss it. Over to you, Jeremy.
Yeah, hi everyone. Really great to be here. So myself, Saman and Alejandra have kind of given the presentations we're going to give after this a number of times. One time to a big town hall of ACORN members, another one to groups in kind of Scarborough and Jane Finch who are interested in this policy. But we're really happy to kind of be here tonight and hosted by by Bloor, Dufferin and JTCAN, because you represent organizations that are doing this kind of fight for inclusionary zoning on a case-by-case basis, in your neighborhoods, building by building. And the fact that you can bring out, about 70 people, tonight, I'm sure more people will be watching the recording the video and sharing it, is a testament that you're a really well-organized neighborhood. And we're excited to kind of, learn from you about how you think this policy could work better, and kind of work with you so that we can really raise the profile of this issue. Your counselor, Anna Bylau, as you know, she's the chair of the Planning and Housing Committee, which is the first step through which this policy is going to have to make its way through. and kind of getting Anna's commitment to push it forward to council strong, in a strong kind of final draft policy is so important to this policy. So we hope you'll kind of be with us to do that advocacy work and kind of help get Anna on side with this. So I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Geography and Planning at the University of Toronto. And I also work with the Affordable Housing Challenge Project, which is a U of T School of City initiative. And I help provide research support in that position to campaigns for affordable housing policies. So I've been asked to give a brief introduction to inclusionary zoning and talk about how City Hall has been considering making use of it. I'm going to begin by talking about how disconnected the price of new housing has become from the needs of most residents. And I'm then going to outline Toronto City Planning's current draft inclusionary zoning policy. And I'm going to argue that it falls far short of the true potential of this policy to expand access to affordable housing. I'm going to conclude by arguing that a bolder IZ policy with higher affordability requirements is entirely possible. And that's based on the experience of other cities that have used IZ for decades, but also on the findings of a number of studies that have been conducted in Toronto. So next slide. Yeah, so when it comes to providing for, one second. When it comes to when it comes to providing for the needs of low and middle income residents, the city's planning process is quite broken. Over the past decade, Toronto has approved record-breaking amounts of new high-rise housing, but the vast majority of these new units have been unaffordable to the vast majority of residents. Today, almost half of Toronto's households are renters, and they're on track to outnumber owners. But despite our city's declining home ownership rate, over the past decade, for every one purpose-built rental unit built, 9 condo units were built. And only 1 in 4 of those small amount of purpose-built rental units were actually priced affordably for the poorer half of renters. So that's just over 4,000 affordable rental units completed for just over 250,000 lower income renter households. So if most housing units being built in Toronto right now are condos, who's actually able to afford them? A recent analysis prepared by the city found that to afford payments on an average newly built 1-bedroom condo, households would need to make over $106,000 per year. And to afford payments on an average newly built 2-bedroom condo, households would need to make over $160,000 a year. So what percentage of Toronto renters, that is households who don't already own homes, can actually afford these new units that are being built? And the answer should really sit with us. Today, over 90% of renter households in Toronto would find payments unaffordable for a new bachelor condo, or for that matter, a resale bachelor condo. So if these new units aren't affordable to those who don't already own homes or have a really large bank of mom and dad, who's buying them? And the answer increasingly is investors. In fact, a recent CMHC analysis found that over the past 5 years, the majority of newly completed condo units in the GTA were immediately rented out as investment properties. And it's difficult to know with certainty how much higher that number is in Toronto. But I've spoken with quite a few real estate sector analysts about this and developers, and a few of them have gone on record to say that today the number is likely 80 to 90%. So these new condos going up, they're predominantly bought as investment properties, which are the least stable and least affordable rental housing in the city. And that's when they're not left vacant or rented out on Airbnb. So this is a terribly unfair and frankly unsustainable way to develop a city. Most new housing is being developed solely for the profits of speculators and of developers, and the needs of most residents are left to grow. So that's why it's so exciting that Toronto's finally close to the finish line with inclusionary zoning. Almost 3 years ago to the day, after years of advocacy, the province finally permitted municipalities to implement inclusionary zoning. And for about 2 years now, a little over 2 years, Toronto has been in the process of preparing and consulting on how to implement it. In a few weeks, October 28th, councillors at the Planning and Housing Committee, which again is chaired by Councillor Anna Bailau, are going to debate and vote on this IZ policy. And then they're going to send a final IZ policy to council to be voted on in early November. So we're really at the finish line of this process. Next slide. So Toronto is late to the game in implementing IZ. Hundreds of jurisdictions across the US, Europe, and Canada have used it for many years, and in some cases, many decades. Today, cities like New York require many developments set aside 25%, sometimes 30% of their floor area for affordable rental units. In Montreal, most new high-rises are required to set aside 40% of newly permitted floor area for affordable housing. And in London, England, many proposals for high-rises are required to set aside up to 50% for affordable housing. This is why housing advocates across the city have been so frustrated to see how conservative the city's draft policy is. Next slide. So in September last year, Toronto City Planning published a draft IZ policy that would only require 5 to 10% of new condo developments with more than 100 units are set aside for affordable housing. And only 3 to 5% of new rental developments with over 100 units are set aside for affordable housing. So it's important to understand as background that in this draft policy, IZ would only apply in certain transit-oriented areas, which are ones that are within 800 meters of subways or GO stations. Now, this is because of changes Doug Ford made about 2 years ago to restrict how municipalities could make use of IZ. Now, fortunately, these transit areas are where the majority of new housing is being developed. But nonetheless, with this heavy-handed provincial interference in mind, it's really all the more important that our city uses IZ to its fullest where it can. So a question is, what is the full potential of this policy? Next slide. To answer this question, the city commissioned a feasibility study, which has been conducted in May 2019, and it was updated in May 2020, and it's going to be updated again shortly. It assesses in 11 different areas of the city what percentage of the floor area of typical condo developments and typical rental developments could feasibly be required to be set aside for affordable rental units. What percentage of the floor area could be required as affordable rental? In this study, affordable was defined as 80% of average market rent. So those units would be, it would cost, say, around $900 a month for a bachelor, or $1,100 a month for a one bedroom, which is around half the price of most newly built rental units today. So certainly not, affordable to kind of ODSP, or fixed income folks, but significantly more affordable. And also with the potential to have kind of nonprofits or co-ops take these units on and then stack in kind of rent allowances to provide for lower income residents. So bear with me for a second, because so the way these studies worked was it was deemed feasible to require developments set aside a percentage of the building for affordable rentals, for example, 20% or 30% of the building, if developers and landowners could still earn a 15% profit margin. Well, that is, if developers could still earn a 15% profit margin while proceeding with this development, even with that percentage. And that 15% profit margin was chosen because it was, kind of known across the industry that if developers can still project to earn that much, they'll be motivated to continue developing. And what these studies find is fascinating. So the city's study shows that it would be feasible to require 2 to 4 times more affordable units than the current draft policy would require, depending on the area. So next slide. This means that right now, in every area studied, typical condo developments could feasibly be required to set aside at least 10% of their floor area for affordable rental units. And in 3/4 of the areas studied, typical condo developments could be required to set aside at least 20% for affordable rental units. And again, developers would still make a 15% profit margin. So there's clearly a large profit margin and also a large amount of money that are kind of going to landowners, who developers are buying from, and to developers themselves in this context. By requiring they include these affordable units, you're going to be taking back from that profit margin and taking back from the amount that landowners expect. Fortunately, okay, 1 second. So I'm sure we're all asking the same question right now, looking at this, which is, what's the maximum percentage of affordable units the city could require in each area? Because this is just at least this much. And it's frustrating to find that the city's study doesn't actually ask. That is, it only asks whether up to 20% is feasible for each of these areas. Now, fortunately, another IZ feasibility study was commissioned by the Maytree Foundation and authored by Steve Pomeroy in the summer of 2019. And it used the same methodology and very similar assumptions to the city studies and found that, for example, up to 39% of typical condo developments could feasibly be set aside as affordable in high price areas like downtown and young Eglinton. So these studies demonstrate that a much bolder approach could be required of most new developments across the city without slowing down the supply of housing. Next slide. So that's why ACORN, Progress Toronto, and a growing number of housing advocates from across the city are now organizing a citywide campaign for a bolder approach. And we're united in advocating for a policy that would require a minimum of 20 to 30% of new high-rise residential developments are set aside for rental housing that's permanently affordable for a mix of low and lower middle income residents. Having looked at the precedents from other major cities and the city's own feasibility studies, we can see this would be feasible to require of most condo developments and of a large number of rental developments without slowing down housing production. So in conclusion, let's take a big picture perspective on the potential of IZ in Toronto. Last slide. So right now, there are a staggering 247,000 housing units that have been proposed and are under review by the city's planning department. As we've seen, the majority of these are high-rise condos in transit-oriented areas. If 20% of the units that are proposed right now were required to be affordable rental, Toronto would create an additional 49,000 permanently affordable rental units in the coming years. Now, to put that in perspective, this would more than double the city's current commitment to support the creation of 40,000 affordable rental units by 2030. And it would do so without costing the city a dime. Again, this is paid for by a reduction in the profit margins expected by developers and a reduction in the huge windfall gains expected by the landowners selling their land to have these constructions built on. So thanks for being part of this. I'm really looking forward to the discussion, and I'm going to hand it over to my friend Alejandra, who's going to give some long-term perspective on the campaign to win a strong IZ policy for Toronto.
Okay, thank you so much. It was awesome what I heard. I never saw Erela speaking and Kathy, and well, Jeremy, we have become pals almost. Speaking about inclusionary zoning with Saman too. My name is Alejandra Ruiz Vargas, and I am the chair for East York ACORN, and tonight I'm delighted to be here with you guys because it's the part of the fight, isn't it? This is the part of the fight that we need to do to win this wonderful inclusionary zoning that, even though it's not the solution for the housing crisis, is a beautiful tool that is going to be, that can be used in a way that is going to be very proficient and as something that is going to give hope to people. And again, why hope is so important? Because if we have hope, the city can thrive, isn't it? We need hope. And we know how to a meter of hope, isn't it? But if we will have a hope meter right now, the bars will be very low. This is why we need this program called inclusionary zoning. Well, and I'm going to start saying what is ACORN as well. And well, ACORN is an organization that fights for social change. So we are low income and moderate income people together, mostly tenants. We are about 140,000 people coast to coast. And we have been fighting for affordable housing, childcare for all, internet for all, reforming the EI, and predatory lending and fair banking. So I always like to start to give an example in how tenants in the city are right now doing. Everybody knows here that tenants are having one of the most difficult times of this, like the city knows. And but I'm going to tell you that there are a new trend that we found, and is that there are people who had rent a room, but for $900, and the owner of the apartment doesn't allow the person to use the kitchen and to use the living room. So this is a new trend. So it's getting worse. The situation is getting worse. And now another tenant member of ACORN, who is 73 years old, and when she pays her bills, she only had $79 to live. So that means that another 3 rent increases, she will be in the streets. So this is why we need inclusionary zoning now. No more time. We cannot wait more time. We need it yesterday. So this is why it's so important what we are doing tonight, and that hopefully people get excited and motivated, and don't and start like a dog when they saw a bone. You know, when a dog saw a bone, they don't let it go, you know. So same thing here with inclusionary zoning and with all the policies that can help people to obtain affordable housing. So so these are pictures here from people fighting specifically for affordable housing, so in different parts of the city. So next slide, please. Thank you. So in 2006, Cherry De Novo, that is a NDP, that is a NDP, but she was an MPP, introduces a private members bill for inclusionary zoning. And then in 2008, ACORN, with partnership with Wellesley Institute, put a report with Richard Darla, titled Inclusionary Zoning in Toronto. So then in 2009, and between 2009 to 2014, NDP introduces the inclusionary zoning bill 5 times. Listen to this, 5 times. And it's like went for an year and went for the other, you know, 5 times. Anyway, then finally in 2014, Peter Milson, a liberal MPP, introduces a bill, but again, nobody listens. So can we pass the other slide, please? Thank you. Finally, then ACORN, well, finally, no, ACORN started the action in 2015. And by the way, this was my first action. So I was a brand new baby. I don't know, I am not there, but I was freezing that day. And I was my new first action. So I was all excited. Yes, let's go and fight for affordable housing. So we were there in my call in 2082 Dufferin. And then at the same time in Montreal, in French, they were doing the same thing, the other members from ACORN. So it was awesome. And yes, we went there and we said, we want inclusionary zoning, and all these people, all these nice people looking for the same thing since 2015, previous 2005, isn't it? So look at the whole history. So then, if we pass the other slide, please. So look at these beautiful faces. And we see Sean Mahar that is there. You can see Sean Mahar, a little bit younger, Sean. No, you're looking great still. And then Mike Layton, and then myself, yeah, looking younger too, you know. Anyway, and then this is in 2016. We did a lot of campaigns, and we did workshops. Oh, I remember one workshop in the 519 and in Scarborough. Well, a lot of stuff we were doing. And then finally in December 2016, the IC regulations passed, okay? And everybody's all happy and all this stuff. And can we pass to the other slide, please? But what happened in 2017, the regulations come from the province, but guess what? They were very pro-developer. So we were like, boo, no, this cannot happen. How this can happen? And in 2018, as you see all the pictures there, we went, like, I can say the names, like the people that went there, pretty much my Layton, well, Social Planning Toronto was there, ACTO, MTA, Paula Fletcher, Kristen Wanton, the MPP Peter Towns, and other people that I don't remember right now. But anyway, it was a big crowd, and we pushed it that the Ministry of Housing came. We were screaming, and finally we went up, and they sent the senior that I cannot point it out, so sorry, but he's the tall guy in the second picture to my, well, how I can say in the center, the picture of the center. Anyway, doesn't matter who he is, but he at least listened. And then finally, we met with Peter Milchen, and he is the first meeting with ACORN that we went, and finally he said, yes, 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 yes to all. Finally, he said, okay, you're going to, the municipality is going to get whatever the municipality wants. Okay, so next action, sorry, next slide, please. So finally, 2018, we had the victory, big party again. We were so happy, so excited. What happened? Dufferin elected. No, this was terrible because he changed it again, the law with the bill 108. Yeah, the bill 108, and again, we had to fight. So this, and between 2018 and 19, he did a legislation to limit IC, meaning inclusionary zoning. So again, more pictures, more people. We went again there, and this was one. No, this wasn't there. Anyway, this was a big action as well, and we spoke. But that time, Dufferin was empowered, and we spoke with the senior of the Ministry of Housing at that time. So next slide. So then in 2019, the City of Toronto hires these people, very reliant consultants, to study the impact of inclusionary zoning. But what happened is that in BLC, these people has received an award from developers to help them, isn't it? So it wasn't a great move to hire them, because of course, they're going to say, no, inclusionary zoning is a no good policy, please don't do it, you know? So of course we say, no, it's not true, because we have been seeing other people, and we have seen that in New York and in other places, it's very successful. So, but they still saying no. Then the study was saying that they want, the developers want 50% of project profit margin. So this cannot be like that at all. So next slide, please. And then in May 2019, we released an inclusionary zoning best practices that, by the way, Sean Mahar was the one who did it with ACORN. It's awesome. If you want to see it, there is the link there. So you can see that we not making this up. This is a reality. Not because we are poor, we not smart. This doesn't mean that. Not because we are suffering. This doesn't mean that we don't know what is happening and that we cannot do research or something like that. We found out that this is a reality, but the city is still saying that it's not. Why is different Toronto from New York? Why is different Toronto from UK? Like, I mean, it's the same thing as people needing housing. That's it, period. Same human right. So next slide, please. So then deputations that we did in 2020, again, pressing for the inclusionary zoning. I've been expressing that I only had a child, isn't it? But inclusionary zoning become like my second child. And I feeling the pains, isn't it? But the baby is not popping up. We need this baby popping up. We need this baby here, like quick, because really, people can die, you know? If we don't do something, people can die. So next slide. So finally, this is what we want. This is the baby that we need to christen it. This is the baby that we need. And this is a minimum of 20 to 30% set aside or inclusionary zoning. We need to apply this to 60 units. Bill needs to be permanent. This needs to be deeply affordable. And we need to put some rental housing as well. So this is what really the city needs. This is what Torontonians need. And the next slide, please. So you saw all the history, isn't it? Why we had time to put all the history from inclusionary zoning is because it's needed. It's because this is what we had to be done to really bring this reality that hopefully is going to be 30% of what we are expecting, or 29%, what the last report say. Maybe I'm forgetting the name, but something around that. But we need powers and numbers. So now there are here 70 people that know more about inclusionary zoning. So now you become part of this baby. So now you have a responsibility to make that this baby born, and then let's see this baby grow. So now you become like this, like the stepfathers. I don't know what is the other word. Stepfathers, stepmothers of this baby. So we need power and numbers, because the power and numbers is what it was making this policy can until right now what it is. The next slide, please. Then we still keep pressure on politicians. Well, and we know we have been keeping pressure on Ana, because Ana Bailao, we don't know really where she stands. She has been saying since that she supports, but we need to really see a big support from her. And this is why we still keep pressuring her. But not only her, there are other politicians, councillors that are not on board. So next slide. And then election time. We had passed a federal election. I don't have to say too much, I think so. But please, we had a power in our hands, and it's called vote. Please vote for the people who align for what we think. And it's very important that we do that as a democratic country that we are. And then next slide, please. So this is our chapters. So if you really want to make a difference as well, look at, we had a chapter in Etobicoke, we had a chapter in Weston, we had 2 chapters in Scarborough, the East York chapter, the downtown chapter, and the York West chapter meeting. So there you go. You can become a member of ACORN, and we really have fun, even though we had frustration sometimes, but we have fun too. So next slide, please. And you can, I saw somebody that say how you can join. Well, there you go. You can call to us to 416-461-9233. And this, I love this advertisement because it's a good advertisement, okay? Toronto, FO@acorn.org. Oh, sorry, acorncanada.org. And next slide, I think so is the last slide. And by the way, we had 2 events that Andrew is going to share in the chat. Andrew's still here. One in the one is in the City Hall, and the other I don't know. Then anyway, we will put it there. Thank you so much for your attention, and all the best. Thank you.
Don't worry, I will share the events that Alejandra is speaking about.
Oh, thank you so much. You are always on the ball. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you. Saman was going to recap next session on really what to do, where can we go from here, what are some key next steps and action items we can take individually and collectively. But we thought, we've heard from a few people at this point, and we thought we'd pause here for some questions and answers. We hope that, you know, I see that the chat is very active. Great. It feels like we're all together. But I wanted to make sure we had a moment to make sure that everybody understands what is inclusionary zoning, you know, what is the history, where are we in the process, why is this so urgent right now, besides the fact that, you know, housing is an urgent issue. We actually are at a decision-making point really at the city. So we're really all pushing hard because of that. But thought we would pause here. Are there any questions, any comments? Do people want to share their own thoughts of what they've heard so far? I saw people talking about how the data is really important and impressive. Thank you for that, Jeremy. Also how hopeful it is that if we are able to, not if, when we are able to push for a more aggressive IZ policy, that, you know, we'll really see a change in the landscape of affordable housing. So there's some hope, there's certainly some pressure, and hopefully that's all come out so far in the speakers to date, but thought we would share the platform because this is meant to be a community meeting. So anybody on the line that wants to ask any questions or to make any comments, feel free to put them in the chat, and the team will help me kind of filter through them. Or if you'd like to, you know, raise your hand, happy to share the microphone as well. And I will. Question, is it dangerous to push for affordable housing without having an inclusive definition of affordable? And maybe Jeremy, you can speak to what the policy is, exactly what the definition is in the policy. I've heard 80% of market rent, but I've heard deeply affordable means something different. So Jeremy or anybody else on the call that wants to take that question.
Adam, thanks for bringing that up. It's a really important point, and you know, a huge criticism that the city has taken in recent years is that when they put out a press release to say they've created X amount of affordable housing, you find that in fact the units are kind of the city's definition, current definition, which is 100% of average market rent. And so that means it's the average rent of all people, of all renter households in purpose-built rentals right now, which is significantly less expensive than what new build purpose-built rentals, what few there are going up, are. But at the same time, certainly not affordable to kind of actually the poorer half of renters. Mm-hmm. So it's just middle income renters that a lot of the affordable housing that's been created over the last recent years is affordable to. Now that's been the source of a lot of advocacy from just over the recent years from housing advocates, and there's been a push to say we can't have these affordable units just be have their definition of affordability tied to market rent, because market rent keeps going up, but people's income stays the same. And so not only is this affordable units not affordable to half of the renters, they're also becoming less so by the year. And so a huge win that took place over the course of this IZ legislation process over the last 2 years was that the city committed, again, after countless deputations, and just advocacy, the city committed to change the definition of affordable rent. And so it's currently being proposed at being tied to renter household income. And it's quite a complicated definition, but long story short of it is that it's closer to, it's going to be around, the proposal at least, we'll see if it passes, is going to be likely around $800 per month for bachelor units, I think like around $1,100 a month for 1 bedrooms, and then a bit higher for 2 and 3 bedrooms. But it's still certainly not deeply affordable housing, but it is about 1/3 to 1/4 more affordable than the current definition is, and it's going to stick around connected to how renter household incomes changes. So that will be the rate of affordability of the units that would be created through inclusionary zoning if the proposal goes forward as we hope. So that's a long answer to a big question.
Thank you for that. I'm seeing such great questions in here. So let me go back to Joanna's question. Can someone speak to the mechanics of how people actually get access to these affordable units? Are there mechanisms, what mechanisms are in place to ensure the units go to lower income people? Are there any occasions when non-for-profits like supportive housing providers get access to these units? Do we have any insights on that? And I know Arella also had some comments to add, so feel free. Anybody on the panel, if you will, the virtual panel.
I just wanted to say one quick thing that doesn't get mentioned. As we see all these condo units that are being built, these developments, what they're replacing is deeply affordable units, like the places that are over a shop where somebody's been living there for 100 years at $900 a month for an apartment suddenly is going to cost way more than that. And it would be great if there was a provision that made space for these units that we're losing, these apartments that have been there for decades, where families have come and gone. And when a developer moves someone out, they should replace it with something with a comparable rent. That's the point I wanted to make.
So Irela, not to kind of move away from the other question points, but it's a really good point. And the city has actually had in place for about 15 years a policy called the rental replacement policy. And if you as a developer are kind of redeveloping demolishing, say, a building with 6 or more rental units, you actually have to include, even if you're building a condo, you have to include the number of rental units you've destroyed and provide them at a similar rate of rent, actually more or less the same rate of rent plus inflation to the renter households who were displaced. And the renter households who were displaced, you have to, as a developer, basically subsidize the difference between the rent that they were able to find for the years that they were waiting for their units to be redeveloped. So luckily that policy is in place. It's recently been extended to rooming houses as well. It didn't apply to rooming houses before. At least the city has legislated that. It's now under appeals. But there are tons of units that are less than six units that are getting demolished, and so it's an important consideration. Yeah. Does anyone want to answer the question about the kind of weight, who gets to access these affordable units?
Hi. Yeah, I think Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, but currently the city is looking for a nonprofit to manage those units, and it will be sort of pulling from the pool of those who have been identified as needing affordable housing. So it is an application basis.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that too, and that's that. We're really a lot of people in this campaign are really hoping that a lot of these units will end up being owned and operated by nonprofits and co-ops, and there's certainly a precedent for that. In Montreal, for example, more than half of the units created through IZ are building up the social housing stock. They're owned and operated by those community groups. But in terms of all of these units, I believe there's going to be a centralized kind of like housing list that people can apply for, and then there'll be a lottery for. It's a confusing process because the city is in the process of updating their former system, which was based on really ad hoc, like the developers ran their own lotteries, and there was some corruption found around it. There were just some examples of it not working out. And so the city is in the process of updating it to have a centralized waiting list, but the full details of it, I think, have yet to be released. It sounds like a huge improvement, and it'll ensure that the people with certain income brackets are end up in these units.
I'm going to suggest we take maybe 1 or 2 questions and then move to the next session. We do have time for more Q&A before we wrap up. I just want to make sure we get to the what to do about all this information. There was a question, and my apologies, I'm floating between screens here to manage, but there was a question, what is meant by the 20 to 30% Can someone please clarify what the 20 to 30 demand means with regards to condos as opposed to rentals, since as Jeremy pointed out, the vast majority of new developments are condos. Is that question clear, Jeremy?
I can.
I'm
Well,
picking on
I
you
can
because you're on
start.
my screen. Sorry. Go ahead, Alejandra.
I
as
can
well,
start
please.
if whoever wants to put it at it is okay, of course. 20 to 30% means that the set aside of the building or the development is going to be affordable, being rental or being by own. So this is the nitty and gritty that when we had the yes from the province, then we can sit down again as a city because they're going to be consultations about it as well. How we're going to manage this. I don't know if this answers the question.
I
Or
think so,
somebody
yes.
want to add something? Okay.
And actually, I see lots of answers to the questions happening organically in the chat, as a wonderful community meeting would. So what I'm going to suggest is that we quickly get into the next session led by Saman, and then we will get back to this discussion without having all of the presentations behind us. She may be able to answer some of them as she goes through her presentation, and that way we can close out in a discussion. Over to you, Saman.
Hi, I'm just going to, all right, there we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Saman Tabasinejad. I'm the organizing director at Progress Toronto. I'm here to talk to you about what we're all talking about here today, which is fixing the housing crisis. But what can we do? We have all this basic information. We have the background information from Alejandra. We have all the technical pieces from Jeremy. And now what can we do? So I'm just going to get to the next slide. So we're really working, what we really want to do, and Katie spoke about this a little bit, but we know that developers are working overtime to push forward an inclusionary zoning policy that will not serve us, that will not even begin to address some of the affordable housing crises that we are all facing. But the way that we can push back is recognizing and building our own power. So for folks who are not familiar, Progress Toronto is a not-for-profit organization that advocates and organizes for a more democratic, socially just, and progressive city. And how we think that we will be able to impact change is that we organize. I'm going to take a quick survey in the chat. Who has access to millions of dollars to pay lobbyists? I think Jeremy mentioned some people have access to mom and dad's big bank accounts, but I don't know, some people have access, their parents perhaps have access to big bank accounts. No? All right. Does anyone's parents maybe or family members sit on the board of the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail? Anyone's parents maybe John Tory? All right, no. Nope, not me. I see. Yeah, someone said John Tory has that access. Yes, he does. But that's where John Tory gets his power. He gets his power because he has access to big money, to influence. But what we have access to is actually more powerful. We have access to each other. We have access to friends. We have access to family. And we have access to our colleagues, our community members. So I'm sure the reason why you're all here today is because you're plugged into a community, and that's very powerful. So I'm to direct you to this very scientific picture of all these little fish organizing to overtake the big fish. And that's each and every one of us and our friends and our family. And how to get us all organized in this space is going to take time and energy and effort. And that's why we're all here today. So the 4 pillars of doing that work that Progress Toronto thinks about is building power, which is growth and training, which is what we're all here today to do. We are learning about inclusionary zoning. We're learning about how we get involved, and we're increasing our own capacity to create change. The second is pushing power. which is issue-based campaigns. This is a perfect example of issue-based campaigns. No matter how conservative a politician is, they're going to want to make sure that they get reelected the next time. So if there are enough people in their ward who react and threaten their reelection, they're going to succumb to our demands. And the demands for inclusionary zoning are 20 to 30%, not this 1 to 3 or 5 to 10% that they want to push. The 3 is checking power, which is holding politicians accountable. One of the beautiful things about City Hall and City Council is that there are no parties. Every vote is free. However, that makes it very difficult for people to know how their politicians voted. And one of the powerful things that we want to do at Progress Toronto is making sure people know how their city councilor voted. Did they vote to defund the police, or did they vote against a strong inclusionary zoning policy? And if they didn't vote for that, I'm sure that the majority of their ward cares about affordable housing, and we're going to make sure that they know. And 4, which is when 2 and 3 fail, when we don't get what we want to make sure we take power, and that's electoral work. And we're getting closer and closer to 2022, and that's something to think about when we're organizing for change. So I'm just going to share with you a quick case study of how we won our vacant homes tax, and how it's really a blueprint of how we can win this time around in inclusionary zoning. So in January 2020, we launched a campaign for vacant homes tax. We encouraged and mobilized over 8,200 people to send their messages to City Hall, to their city councilor, to John Tory, to tell them to pass a vacant homes tax. And for folks who are not familiar, a vacant homes tax is a tax that is a tax on vacant units, vacant homes that people are just parking their money, those homes that Jeremy had mentioned earlier. And we hosted 18 phone banks, and there were over 1,600 hours of phone banking, 40 volunteers who phone bank, and people spoke at committee, so at housing and planning, at executive committee, in favor of the vacant homes tax, and they also shared their experiences of the lack of affordability in the city. So there was enough people sort of together, we all flexed our muscle to get that through. And December 2020, we actually won that. And it's because we built people power together. It wasn't Progress Toronto who won, it was all of us together who won. And that is something we can recreate for the inclusionary zoning campaign. And that's what we're here today to do. Oh, sorry. And like I said, how to win inclusionary zoning is something similar. Lobbyists are working overtime, and that means that's our impetus to even work even harder, because we know that they have their ear. I don't have the statistic right here, but we know that lobbyists meet with city councilors an unprecedented amount. They're paid to do this. This is their full-time job. I know for most folks on this call, that you guys have other work to do. You have childcare obligations, you have other caretaking obligations, other community obligations. So this is not necessarily, you're not getting paid to do this 24/7 to lobby, but there are other people who are. So what you can do, you can email your city councilor, your sitting planning committee, staff, the mayor, and tell them why a bolder IZ policy is possible and needed. And I will share links with you on how you can use our tool on our website to make it easy for you to just fill out your name and then send an email to your city councilor and the mayor. You can speak at the Planning and Housing Committee when this policy is debated on October 28th. Jeremy has mentioned this. I'm going to go a little bit more into it as well. And you can organize and join events in your own community. JTCAN and Build a Better Bloor Dufferin has been doing this tonight. We've been seeing it replicated, like Jeremy mentioned, all across the city, different organization. It can even be like you start a WhatsApp group with a few of your friends. You can, it doesn't have to be a big fancy event, but you have these tools now to mobilize your friends, your family, your colleagues, the people who make up your big fish, right? And I want to kind of go through the campaign timeline and what it will take for us to win. So today, October 6th, we're here with all together with this meeting. And on affordable housing, we all have this amazing information in our heads, but if it's just living in our heads, it's not doing anything. Like we need to make it into an action, right? It's all great that we now know about this amazing tool called inclusionary zoning, but if we don't make sure it happens, then what's the point? So there are so many things you can do from now until November 8th, which is when City Council meets to vote for you to make sure this happens. On October 14th at 11 a.m., ACORN is hosting a press conference. Who owns the city? The developers or people. You can tune into that. You can connect with them. You can show up. You can share it on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, wherever. On October 14th, next week, so this is also Thursday, and you can do that in the morning, and then in the evening, you can join Progress Toronto's How to Speak at a Government Committee training. It's a free training. I will be there working with Monica De Vera, who actually works at City Hall, on teaching you how to speak at the government committee about affordable housing, so you will be prepared on the 28th. On October 23rd, which is a Saturday, Progress Toronto is going to be hosting a Davenport outreach canvassing event. I urge all of you to show up, sign up, join us, and I will share all the links in the chat. And you can come with a petition, speak to folks about inclusionary zoning, and make sure that that we have the opportunity, or make sure that people in your community know what's happening, and that their city councillor Anna Bailao has the opportunity to pass a really strong and bold bold inclusionary zoning. And on October 26th, ACORN is going to be hosting a rally for strong affordable housing now at City Hall. You can also join that. And on October 28th, we will be making sure that we are filling up the list with inclusionary zoning advocates, affordable housing advocates, to demand better from our city and our city councilors to pass a strong inclusionary zoning. So you will take all this information you're learning today, share your story, your personal narrative on what's best with the Planning and Housing Committee. And then between October 28th and November 8th, and really throughout all of the rest of October and November, you're going to be organizing your friends, your family, your community, and putting the final pressure to our elected officials to ensure that we leave all the cards on the table, so we will be able to pass a strong inclusionary zoning policy on November 8th when City Council meets. And you can even watch them do so with our City Council watch party that Progress Toronto is going to be hosting, and I will share that with you in the links. So I just want to talk a couple seconds about your city councilor, Anna Bailao. Anna Bailao, Councilor Bailao is the chair of the Housing Planning Committee, and you have the opportunity to contact her to encourage her to support a strong inclusionary zoning. You can leave her a message tonight. I'm sure there's no one in her office right now working, but you can leave her a message tonight. I put her number right on this little slide thing, and I have a toolkit for everyone that it's just a link. You can check it out, and you can demand more from inclusionary zoning, making sure that the minimum of 20 to 30% of all new residential developments with 60 or more units are set aside for permanently affordable housing, rental housing, affordable housing to be kept affordable forever, not just 25 years, and for inclusionary zoning to include all parts of Toronto, not just those that are close to transit hubs. And that is that. I'm going to pass it back to our wonderful moderator, Charity.
And I know we had some burning questions before. I don't know how many have been answered in the chat, but I would actually love to hear people's voices. I believe our MPP, Merritt Stiles, is on the line and had wanted to make a comment or a question. I don't know which of the two, but I will invite her to start and unmute herself as we start the open discussion.
Hi there. Hello, everyone. Well, first of all, thank you, Progress Toronto and Build Better Bloor Dufferin and Junction Triangle Community Action Network for organizing this tonight. It's been great. I've been sitting here listening, and that's what I like to do, is listen a little bit every once in a while, and especially when we're talking about some of these really important decisions that are being made. at City Hall. So thank you. I want you to know, I just wanted to kind of echo a couple of points while I have a chance here. And one of them is to say, to Alejandra's point, thank you for raising sort of the timeline around the provincial side to this, which is that whatever happens, and I completely agree with Progress Toronto. I mean, I think the organizing work that has to happen to get this decision made properly at the city level is imperative. But whatever the outcome, and hopefully we get there, but whatever the outcome, we're going to need a provincial government that's not going to derail everything again. That's not going to wield, some new legislation and take away more city powers. And so I'm not surprisingly gonna I think urge folks to really join me and others who are going to be fighting for some of those same issues at the provincial level in June next year when the election is called provincially. And I guess the only other thing I wanted to reiterate, I guess, is, I've had so many conversations, of course, with Build Better Bloor Dufferin in particular over the years, and the amazing work that they did. And it's really important to acknowledge the, as others have here, the toll it takes on volunteers, on people in this community who have given up a great deal. I mean, I look at Arella as an example here in our community, right? But like people who give up a lot, and it's all, as I loved Saman's point about, we don't have the money. Many of the folks that are actually the most active volunteers and sitting on all these committees are not paid. Maybe they're even on ODSP, maybe they're on Ontario Works, and they're giving up an extraordinary amount of their time and energy. And so I really just want to also celebrate the fact that we are all here to talk about sharing that important work, because it really is those little fish up against the big fish. And we could be doing so much better as a province as well in terms of supporting that incredible advocacy. So I think that's what I will leave it. And again, just thank you all. And I'm looking forward to hearing the more questions and answers. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments. And as a member of this community, and thank you for them, we also opened the floor. You've opened the microphone. So invite any other members of the community that are on the line that may want to, turn your camera on and your microphone on and be heard. We'd love to hear any comments you may have, any questions you may have. We've tried to design the evening to give you some information, but also give you some action items. And we know it's a lot that we've thrown into, an hour and a bit. So welcome any feedback, any questions, and I will also check the chat for people who are a little shyer and maybe who don't want to go onto camera. I see some people agreeing that whatever passes at the city, needs backup at the province. I saw some mention earlier on about, why could people be pushing against an IZ policy, but who would be against it? And I think besides developers, there's a sense that maybe it's too aggressive. And to people's points already today that, now's the time to kind of make a mark in the sand, if you will. We know that developers are not going to voluntarily go to 50% affordable housing, not likely, not many, if there are any. And so, this policy will really create a benchmark and a minimum standard that we can then keep advancing this going forward. Mary, how many more encampments do we need before people wake up to the fact that we need this? Agreed. I mean, there's real urgency. I think somebody said it earlier that people's lives really are at stake if we don't solve this housing crisis we have in the city. And I see a hand raised. Heather, if you want to unmute yourself, please go ahead.
Thanks. Hi. Okay, just to clarify then, because I had asked it earlier, and so two questions quickly. The first is, so are we asking that 20 to 30% of all units or floor space be designated rental, even among those buildings that are condo buildings? Is that what we mean when we say 20 to 30% be rent geared to income rentals? That's my first question. And the second one, it sounds like the 15% that the developers are, quote, entitled to earn in profits is based upon this one study. How fixed is that 15% profit margin? As that, like, do we all just sort of collectively agree that that's what they're entitled to and go with that? Has anybody considered saying, no, you know, they could have less profit? So those two questions, if anyone could speak to either.
Yeah,
Great
well,
questions. ahead.
we had said tireless, like so many times to these developers that they cannot have 50% on margin. Like they're going to leave if they had 10 or if they had 5%, because they really have been kings for so many years. So now is the time that they need to share. They didn't like it. Jeremy was there when we, well, many people was there, even Sean and other people was there when we had this meeting with the developers, and we told them like they are making too much money, and I think so almost one cry. I don't know. What I tried to say is we have telling them many times and that they no need to be so greedy. Basically, 50% is a lot when we had people that live 3 families in 3 bedrooms, you know, three families and 3 bedrooms because they cannot afford, or a family of 4 in a basement apartment because they can afford more. Yeah, it's very tough. And probably, Jeremy, you're good with the numbers, very good. So you wanna answer the 20 to 30? Thank you.
Sure. I'll just start by saying, you know, why 15% profit margin for developers. Big picture, you know, our city has gotten to a point where we rely on private developers to produce our housing. These are large private developers who, you know, do this because they want to make large profits, and that's why they only produce housing that's, you know, affordable basically to, you know, the richest, often white, you know, speculators building up portfolios of housing. I think that ideally we would build up a large group of nonprofit developers who wouldn't expect profit and wouldn't have a mandate to do anything other than reinvest any surplus they had into making these units more affordable. We don't have that system, and one tool the city has right now that it's not using anywhere near enough is to capture some of the uplift in value they're offering to developers when they redevelop land to make these high-rise condos, and say, well, you know, we're gonna bring your profit margin down, and we're gonna bring down the amount that you're gonna kind of bid on these pockets of land to build on, and we're gonna figure out what that would be so that you're still at least motivated to develop. That's what IZ is. It's not, you know, it's a tool, and it's one hopefully that'll help us build up a social housing stock that's significantly larger than what we've done, you know, while just letting this issue kind of get worse and worse without doing much. But, you know, absolutely, we should be building up our social housing development sector, and we need major federal and provincial funds, much more than we're getting now, to kind of work towards that. As far as the first question, it's quite simple. You know, there are 2, you know, main types of, you know, there are 2 types of residential tenure going up. One of them is purpose-built rental, one of them is condos. The vast majority have been condos because it's far more profitable to build and sell condos. Because it's far more profitable, there's a lot larger profit margin to kind of say, well, we're going to tamper down and actually require a larger amount of affordable housing provision if you're going to make those condos. That's why when we say like 20 to 30%, you know, in many areas of the city where it's very lucrative to build condos, you know, they've found that kind of beyond 30% would be feasible to require. And so, and in some areas, you know, 20% for affordable rent for of the purpose-built rental buildings could be required to be affordable rental. In Davenport, for example, I believe the number is 20% of affordable rent of purpose-built rentals could be affordable in the new updated feasibility study. although there are other areas where that's not technically feasible, but we're kind of saying that that's our straightforward demand, that whether it's purpose-built rental or condos, we want to see between 20 and 30%.
Thanks, Jeremy. I see Cheryl has her hand raised. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello. This has been amazing. So thank you so much for hosting this very rich in information presentation. So I'm here joining from the Eglinton Avenue West neighborhood. I also have relations with the Annex neighborhood where I actually live, and Kingsview Village where I grew up. So this is coming from a conversation I had actually with Arella about getting changes to this inclusionary zoning policy. So in Eglinton Avenue West, we currently have a councillor who's very much on side. We also, who's Councillor Matlow, we do share Anna Bailao as a councillor on our west side. We asked her for support on inclusionary zoning, and she said to hold on and wait on for the publishing of the report on October 8th. So we'll see what goes with that. But I'm curious about if there is action going on in neighborhoods that have councillors that would be on the kind of on the fence in a way, kind of like how Anna Bailao is, or even further flung in terms of their alignment with us. How is the organizing going with those neighborhoods?
And I think again, Alejandra, ACORN and Progress have and Jeremy as well have had this conversation in multiple neighborhoods across the city, and maybe can speak to, how those conversations are going in neighborhoods with, more opposition or less opposition.
Yeah, well, we met with 16 councillors, meaning ACORN, and many of them, they were like, yes, well, and others was like, no, of course, and others were like, we're not going to comment. From my heart right now, I don't remember it. Well, I remember, well, my Layton said yes, of course. I don't remember the other names. And the thing is, when we did this meeting with all the 16 councillors, we realized that we need to put pressure with Anna Bailao, because Anna really is the chair, isn't it? And she has, well, power and the way that she's the chair. And we say, let's go and try with Anna, because at the beginning, Anna wasn't really too keen on the inclusionary zoning, meaning that she wanted more than 5 to 10%. I think so now with our pressure, things has been changing a little bit, but I don't know really until what extent, because ACORN has been no meeting with her for some time now. This is why at least ACORN decided that we're going to do it, putting pressure with Anna and the Davenport for that reason, because again, she's the chair. But I don't know, yeah, we were planning to do it with other councillors, but again, this was our decision. We thought that the best will be to pressure Anna.
Yeah, and I can add to that. Yeah, so Anna is the chair, and so our priority, so the way that the strategy is sort of going is focusing on those who are on the Housing and Planning Committee. And so Councillor Bailao has is the most powerful person on that committee, is also a deputy mayor. So if Councillor Bailao does agree to a stronger inclusionary zoning policy, that puts in that means the mayor is more on side, and other city council members, and Progress Toronto has been focusing on our three city councillors, and there and one is obviously Davenport, so Bilao, Bradford as well. Someone asked in the chat, both Bradford. I think Bradford, Alejandra, from when I remember, ACORN met with them, and there was something similar in as to
Very
what
similar, like Anna. Yeah, very.
Yes, or-
I actually even know a word, basically.
Yeah,
Basically
so-
was like, I don't know, I cannot comment, but yeah, I like affordable housing, but I'm not going to comment.
yeah, so sort of
Yeah, I
in
know.
that way, that not committing. And then also Councillor Grimes in Etobicoke Lakeshore. So we know that those, so that's where we have been focusing our efforts. We've gotten hundreds of people to sign petitions in all of those wards. And, you know, so what needs to happen is how much pressure we can put or on each counselor for them to support a bolder inclusionary zoning policy. And once that happens, the other counselors will follow. If, like, for instance, the chair of the housing and planning committee supports a bold inclusionary zoning policy, it makes it easier for the mayor and Bradford and also Nunziata and all that, for all those folks to also support that. So I think that the way, like, so similar to what Alejandra is saying, to put pressure on key city councilors that are most likely the ones who are going to be making these decisions, especially at the committee level.
Thank you for that. So definitely some strategic thinking as to, you know, where to apply pressure, where to push, and really that image of, you know, all a small fish kind of pushing in the same direction is really resonating, certainly with me. And I am conscious of time. It's 8:32. I just did a quick scan of the chat and didn't see any questions. So lots of really great and rich conversations and comments being shared. Thank you for that. Thank you all for participating. Thank you for being such great community members and fun to spend an hour and a half with on a Wednesday night. I also want to thank, obviously, those who shared their insights today and their knowledge and their capacity building that's been happening as a community to help us really align our efforts and push in the same direction. It's really a timely discussion and a really important issue for our community as we push towards affordable housing. I will end the session here. I'll move to the next slide and leave that up for a little bit with some contact information. You can reach out to all of the organizations that participated today. The email address is there. And I believe someone also put a toolkit in the chat if you want to click away. And you can see, you know, what to do in terms of what petitions to sign, what events to participate in, and certainly what organizations to align with. Thank you again, and have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Can I say something?
Go for it.
Yeah, I only want to say thank you for everything. It was really awesome. Thank you for the invitation. We need to keep the pressure. We are doing great, and hopefully